Welcome to Printing Profits. What's in a niche? Is it more about what you sell or who you sell to? Should you keep your appeal broad or specific? According to some experienced sellers, the right answer involves a bit of everything. Figuring out a niche can get tricky for new business owners, but once you've got one that works, running your own business starts to get a lot easier. Welcome to Printing Profits. I'm Talish Zuffer. And for my guest today, carving out a profitable niche has been no small task. Spider Perry is a queer and disability activist, blogger, public speaker, and author. They started their online and family-run store in 2016, catering to a queer and Jewish audience. And by 2021, their business had grown to even include their first employees. Now their online store NerdyKeppie isn't only a successful business, but also an inclusive space for their community to celebrate their identity without compromise. This episode is called To Niche or Not to Niche. Spider, thanks for chatting with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's talk about what got you into print on demand and what that journey has been like for you so far.
So I will be the first person to tell you, we kind of have stumbled into where we were initially, right? It's only been in the past couple of years that we've really started to, I don't want to say do things purposefully, but really take a longer term view. It kind of surprised me. So I started NerdyKeppie because I went actually to look and find, I was looking at first for kippot or yarmulkes for my daughter that were trans pride stuff, and I couldn't find anything. And so I started making those. And then when I realized that I couldn't find this other thing, we started, looking for ways to supply this thing and that thing. And that was kind of what led me to print on demand, because at the beginning, it was just me, right? So it was me and my computer, and I was looking for a way to add more options to the things that I could carry, while not adding to the amount of physical labor that I had to do, right?
Yeah.
I was not able to physically do all of the things that I might have wanted to do. Like I can only knit so many things in a day.
Yeah.
I can only, embroider so many things in a day. So what are the options for me there? And I kind of stumbled into the world of print on demand. And once I realized that was out there and that was an option for me, I really dove into doing a lot of research on, okay, well, what's the best way to do this? Let me join 9,000, Facebook groups and forums and watch all of these YouTube videos and things like that. And we started out with, as a lot of people do, with t-shirts and mugs and things like that, the very basic, I guess, print on demand options. And from there, once we realized that things like all of our print clothing and, house stuff were an option, we began to slowly, research and go, okay, well, what do we do? How do we add that? How do we make that work within our brand? And it just kind of started to snowball.
Yeah.
For us, it was not only a way to expand when we had first it was just me, and then it was 2 people, and, we're 6 people now. But at the time, it was just this tiny little, nugget of a company. And yeah, it just kind of, snowballing is really like the only way to just kind of rolling down the hill and gathering momentum. And as the brand and the customer base became more and more defined, we were able to add more and more options. And I think for us, the 2 things that have really made like print on demand such a core piece of what we do and how we're able to serve the community that we serve and kind of be in that niche that we're going to be talking about today, is that because we don't have a minimum number of items that we have to get in any particular print or anything like that, it allows us not only to be more like environmentally conscious in terms of, I don't have to have 50 of these things sitting around.
Yeah.
If they don't sell, then they're a waste, which
Right.
is a thing that our community is rather focused on. But also, it allows us to really go very far into like some of the sub niches in terms of like you know, we serve the queer, the LGBTQ community. Well, I can make something that is targeted at like a very small, like, okay, so this is someone who identifies as demisexual. This is someone who identifies as aromantic. We can get into those like very narrow little niches and have something for people who I never see my flag represented. I never see,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. We don't have to stick to like the big three flags,
Right.
right?
Of
We can
course.
do all of the little ones. And that has become like a hallmark for us, really, that
Yeah.
we will have or we will make something in your flag for you. So yeah, I mean that's really been a thing that has allowed us to continue to in that lane, right?
Yeah.
Because if I don't have to have 20, 30, 50 of a particular thing, then I have that option, right?
Yeah.
In a way that I would not have that option if I had to have 30, 50, 100 of that, minimum order quantity.
Sure. When you have that much success, though, I mean, and you've seen that kind of come out
Mm-hmm.
in ways that you haven't expected, from a business perspective, has that ever appealed to you where you thought, hey, if this has worked for my niche, can I expand to a more general audience? Or is it the opposite, where because it's worked so well, you kind of feel like, you know what, I want to insulate this. I kind of want to cater to the people who have made me what I am. Where do you go with that?
So I think you could do either way, but I think that I would want to be very careful,
Mm.
right, to protect, to insulate that niche, because those are the people, like I said, those are our best brand ambassadors. Those are the people who have loved us from the beginning and have nurtured our business as we were like, hey, contribute to our GoFundMe because our first embroidery machine broke and we have to buy a new one.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to protect that, but at the same time, um, we kind of, like I said, we started out with like a very, very small niche, right? I wasn't just like, it wasn't just the LGBTQ community, it wasn't just the queer community. I was making things for queer Jewish people, which
Yeah.
if you think that the LGBTQ community is small, well, like there's only like 1% of the population,
Yeah.
2% is Jewish. And then how many it was a very, very small niche. So we started out having to kind of break out of like this tiny, tiny little niche into a bigger niche,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then go back further into the newer niche that we had chosen. I think that when you come out of something like that, you have to not just go out to a bigger audience per
Right.
se, but maybe go into a secondary niche, because we actually have started branching out a little bit into about it's next week. We are going to be launching a set of bags that we're doing for Onyx Path Publishing, which is a tabletop role playing game
Oh,
company.
okay.
And we're doing the bags for their one of their books that came out or is coming out, and we're going to be doing the accessories that go along with that particular book release. And we have a lot of patterns. If you look at the patterns and things on our website and the designs that are pride, but also gaming, right?
Mm.
So like specifically TTRPG stuff. And so we've kind of like added this other niche. So not everything in that gaming niche is necessarily pride related, right? But that's a second niche that we've kind of added on that is like a puzzle piece locking into,
Yeah.
So we've added this second niche, right? But there's a lot of like, I don't want to say overlap, but it is interlock, right?
Yeah.
Because the tabletop role playing game community, especially in terms of the folks who are writing and publishing and stuff, is very queer,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you get that interlock, and then you can add on other pieces, right? And we have a a lot of leftist political stuff as well. Right. Again, that's another niche that kind of like links onto. And that's kind of the way that we viewed it, not as expanding necessarily to a wider and more general audience, but let's add on all of these like complementary things. Just like putting together a meal on a plate, right? So we have our meat, you know, which is our LGBTQ stuff and our queer stuff. And so, okay, let's add the potatoes. Let's add in the gaming stuff. Let's add in, you know, but it's not just expanding. It's adding on all of these little pieces that then make a full, complete, rounded meal. So that for us is the approach.
It's kind of like this idea that I read about recently with business. It's like when you're expanding and you think about going more general, it's this idea where it's you can kind of consider it as like vertical growth. When in reality, if you have a niche, what you should be doing is sort of expanding horizontally instead. So it's like you said, it's like we have this very particular niche, but here's some other really, some other sub niches that we can combine with that. And we can add on, ultimately in the end. So you're not sort of, it is a broader appeal, but just not, I guess it doesn't get more general, if that makes sense. It's just sort of like you're expanding the options of what you already have available to you. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And you can do that either by going to other niches or by expanding what you carry for the niches that you already have. Right.
100%.
So, like for us, we started out with the Keep Out the Yarmulkes. We added on when we got our embroidery machines. We started doing patches, like for jean jackets, which is very popular in our group, like where we were in the Philly area when we first started. Because we vended a lot at the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market. Big shout out to those guys; they're fantastic and are a big part of like our getting started. And so we went from that, and then we started adding in like clothing. And the last couple of years, we've really expanded a lot into like home goods, getting all of those things so that, you're, especially with the pandemic and everyone spending a lot more time at home. Well, people aren't going out, so they're not buying, a lot of clothing.
Yeah.
But they sure might like to have a really cool snuggly blanket for when they're working on the couch. They want to have some cool coffee mugs. They want to have, pillows, whatever it may be, that will allow them to take all of these cool things that we make and put them other places within their life.
Yeah.
And so again, like you find those complementary things. Either you're expanding into like another niche, adding on those, puzzle pieces, or you're adding other things that are going to go along with the things that you already offer.
What I'm hearing here is that, like, I'm assuming all of this work that you've done with your store. I mean, this is a lot of trial and error.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But what would be your advice to somebody who has started a store that's committed to a niche, but they're struggling to get sales? Well, I mean, have you been in that position? What did you do?
Oh yeah, yeah. So the first thing I'm going to say is that to make sure upfront that you have built your pricing in such a way that you can comfortably run sales, right? Because a lot of times, like, you may need to do that. It's just a reality, right? You may need to do the discount to get a pop of sales, right?
Sure.
If you've got any kind of toehold at all. I would say one of the big things is to look for different ways to engage your audience, right? And really figure out who your audience really is, right? Now, like, we have really vibrant, small but vibrant social media. We don't have 100,000 followers, but what we do have is we have people who are very engaged with us, right? So we may only have 5,000 followers here, 2,000 followers there, or whatever, but they are very engaged with us. So I think the mistake that a lot of businesses make is they go in and everything is business, right? And they want to figure out how to get people to buy from them immediately. Well, if you look at our social media and the things that we talk about, we are engaging with and boosting other small LGBTQ artists. Like, look at this pin that somebody else put out, right? This cool enamel pin. Look at this Kickstarter for somebody else. And kind of engage with the community as a whole. Because especially in some of these smaller niche communities, right? if you come in and are like, I would like your money, and that is the thing that I would like, you're just going to get, well, you're going to get rejected, right? And that's the biggest, that's the big, no matter how cool your stuff is, you come across as too capitalistic, too like focused on the, and I get it, we all want to make money, but you need to engage with people at a community level, right? And I always say that what you feed feeds you, right? So we have a thing where, like, when we used to go to the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market or other shows and things like that, you have to buy at least one thing every show, right? Because what you feed feeds you. Right. And so you go around and you're like, hey, you know, oh, I want to look at your stuff. It's so cool, right? And you look at everything, you meet everybody, you know everybody, you find out what they offer. Maybe you want to do a collaboration with somebody, you know, and put out something cool together. Or you want to, you know, just pick something up and might have something from somebody else's booth at your booth and you're like looking at it. It's really cool. And that kind of trade and conversation really feeds everybody's awareness of who you are and feeds that community. And you can be like, oh yeah, man, I got this really cool, like, you know, I'm like looking around my office for something I bought at a thing. I have a really awesome little Battlestar Galactica embroidered thing, like for somebody, you know, it's awesome. And when I bought it, it was sitting on our table at the show and people kept asking me where I got it. I was like, oh, I got it over there. Isn't this awesome? I can't wait to put this up in my office. And so that kind of thing where you're really building and engaging that community, what you feed feeds you, right? So I am constantly on our social media, because this is like that virtual version of that, you know, show that you're at, saying like, here's the Kickstarter for, you know, Gay Breakfast's new pin collection. This is amazing stuff. This is, you know, this other company that we really like. This is their new thing, you know. And here's also news. You know, unfortunately, we know, you know, not to get too far down a rotten, you know, line of conversation, but like we know what's happening with the trans community in the United States, right?
Absolutely.
So we are talking about the things that affect us, right? And affect our community as a whole. And we're also asking people to bring resources, and we're boosting those resources on our social media channels. Like, okay, for families who are trying to get out of Texas, or people who are trans people who are trying to move out of Tennessee and get to the East or West Coast or whatever, like those things that matter to your community are the things that you need to be engaging with, and everything else will follow.
Well, that's just exactly what it is. If you are
engaging honestly with your community, everything else follows.
Well, I want to talk about, you know, all these collaborations that you've had or designs that you've made.
Sure.
Have you ever been in a situation, just out of curiosity, where you've created something for the audience in your niche, maybe a design or a concept where, you know, they weren't particularly fans of? You know, has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah. A lot of times, like, I mean, we have launched things that I thought were going to be amazing, right? And I thought we're going to set the world on fire. And
all the best intentions, right?
Didn't.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. I was like, oh, I love this pattern. Like we made this one pattern that I thought was going to be like the coolest, and nobody but me really liked it, right? So there is a constant like need to just keep trying things and figuring out, you know, what really appeals, and also what it is a brand defining kind of thing, right? A lot of our designs tend to be, they're big and bright and bold, but they're also we try to make our designs, most of them, things that it's kind of an if you know queerness, right?
I got you,
where if you don't know that the dress that you're looking at with the pink and white and blue flowers on it is supposed to be a trans pride dress, then you don't know. If you don't know that the leggings with the hot pink and purple and blue pattern on them is supposed to be a bi pride thing, then you don't know. And a lot of people will kind of get away with wearing those things to work because of that strategy, right? So the times where we've had things that we put together that really flopped, have been the times where we didn't really adhere to this brand that we had kind of accidentally created, right?
Wow.
I made a lot of cute, like the little cutesy small prints, like it was like music notes and little hearts and little stars in
Yeah.
like this all over print pattern, right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is great. People are going to love them. They can wear them to work. And people like, it was just crickets,
Interesting. Wow.
A few people bought them,
Yeah.
but it was crickets compared to our usual patterns. I'm like, what's going on, right? And I went to my brother. I went to Jake, right, my brother, who's our ops lead, and he's like, yeah, I think it's because they're nothing like our usual patterns. Like if you look at our usual patterns, like we had these chunky floral prints and like goofy big, like we have one of our most popular prints is a cartoon capybaras.
Yes, I've heard
wearing
of this. Yeah.
wearing pride flower crowns.
I love that. Yeah.
People love it, right? But that's nothing like cutesy little music notes.
Sure.
And but the flip side of that is that sometimes things will take off that you did not expect, and you're like, what just happened here?
Yeah.
And you have to kind of take a step back and go, okay, what lightning did we catch in a bottle that this went this way? And the flip side of that in that case was, for example, we made a print that was bats, right? Yeah. It's these like it's like a 19th century engraving of like bats. And I just made a repeating pattern out of it, and it was pride colors, and I put it on some stuff, and like a TikToker bought one of our dresses and was like, guys, check out this dress. These bats are trans, right? And all of a sudden, like, I was like, what happened? Like, our shop just blew up.
Yeah.
And we were like, where are all these orders coming from? Like, I'm not complaining, but where are all these orders coming from? And like, our my email was just like ping, 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 like all morning. And we're like, what's going on? Somebody messaged me, like, did you see that Dakota like recorded a thing about your dress? And like, oh, well, that explains why all of these.
Yeah.
That's for all these. And I think we did something like $25,000 that weekend in 3 days.
Oh my goodness.
And it's never like that, right? It's, we do well, but we don't do $25,000 in 3 days, right? Yeah. So things will flop and things will take off that you never expected. And you kind of just have to learn to surf that wave, because it's going to come, it's going to go. And you're going to have to just figure out like what hit. And even if you do everything exactly the same the next time, it may not happen that way again. Yeah. And you just got to keep, throwing the spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's like it's like the benefit comes from actually committing more to the niche that you're in, but also sort of like leaving room for like growth a little bit. Like you have to experiment, but just, kind of keep your eye on the prize, I guess is what I'm hearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if the better of an idea you get of who you are as a brand and who your community is and who you're serving and why you're serving that, right? The more you're going to be able to play around with and, enjoy the things that you're doing, right? And people will start coming to you for things that fit that niche. And you'll be able to go, okay, yeah, that works. And decide like, even like we do custom work as well. And sometimes I just do whatever the custom thing is. And sometimes I'll go, you know what? I really like that. I'll do it in all of the, like we have 10 standard flags that we do for every design, right? Yeah. Like, will I do that for 9 more flags? Yeah. We have somebody who I'm currently working on a pattern similar to the capybara's pattern, but with lemurs, because she really wanted a lemurs design, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that's really cute. You know what? I think once I finish this for her, I'll do that in the other flags and we'll put that out, right? Because I think that will match our niche. And I think that'll probably sell, but I guess we'll find out, But since I have a good idea of our customers and what they like, it allows me to play a little bit more, Okay, so the jellyfish pattern worked, but the tardigrades didn't, right? Like the water bears didn't. So, okay, so we'll try this next thing. And and you just kind of keep going. And it is a process of refining over time.
I love that you said that. I'm suddenly starting to regret that I don't have enough tardigrade, themed clothing in my scene. I need more of these water bears,
It's a cute pattern and I really like it, but it hasn't taken off the way that I thought it would. I mean, people love the bats, We get a lot of folks who are very science oriented, who love all of these little niche, things. We have like stuff that from the JWST, the big space telescope. We've got public domain images from there and modified those. And, we have a very small astronomer, and I'm not joking, professional astronomer contingent among our fans who they loved it when we launched that thing. Our galaxy print is huge. We have science teachers who come in and, they're like, oh, you have a new, DNA print. I'm going to grab that immediately, whatever it is, and who knows, man? You just never know. Just never know.
You talked about elevating voices, getting to know your community as a big part of how you market and how you just expand your products. But I'm wondering, is there a way, are there other things that people should be considering when it comes to marketing to a target audience in a niche, aside from elevating voices, aside from just getting to know the people? What are the things that should we be considering?
Sure. I think that you need to start reaching out to other sub niches, I guess, in and of themselves to cross promote, right? Mm-hmm. Coming up in the next couple of months, we're going to be advertising on 3 different podcasts within our community. And one is an actual play TTRPG podcast that has a lot of LGBTQ folks on it. And we've worked with them before. And through working with them and advertising with them, we are going to be advertising on 2 more queer-oriented podcasts. One is a queer parenting podcast, and another is a queer movies podcast, right? So we're taking our advertising dollars and we're spending them very consciously within the community. Right. I try not to just throw my dollars at Zuck and at Elon and advertise them. I mean, there is a space, right, for buying social media ads, but also I would say be very deliberate in putting those dollars back into another angle of your own community, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Giving those dollars to a local queer newspaper or doing some sort of collaboration with a queer club. We donate a lot of fundraising items to queer proms, to, items like, when the William Way Center is fundraising in Philly. Yes, here, take this thing and auction it off. And here's our name, right? We just sent one of the JWST image lamps, that one of the little tripod lamps we got actually from Printify, went out to a queer prom in Philly and is going to be auctioned off as a fundraiser.
Oh, lovely.
So that's, we're giving back to the community, but it is also, part of our advertising and part of our, engaging with the larger community. And again, what you feed feeds you. I can't say it enough, right? You go and engage with those groups, right? And you give them what they're looking for, and they will give you what you're looking for.
I want to talk about, we were talking about your products a little bit before, these leggings that you created and these collections and these bags. Are there some ways, say for example, if I had a store where I wanted to expand my product offerings, but I was worried that it would sacrifice its focus on my niche? Is that a relevant concern or for you, or is that a concern for that business owner should have when it comes to listing products on their store?
I would definitely say don't box yourself in so much that is a thing that you have to worry about too much, right? There is something to be said for having focus. We have a lot of products on our store. But I think what makes it work for us is that our store is well organized and easy to filter and things like that. So I think that like, because if you go out to our shop, you can go into and say, okay, well, I want to look at leggings, right? And you can filter by what size you wear. You can filter by what flag you want, or what pattern you think is interesting or whatever, and really like, get down to what you really want to look at. So that will allow you to have all of these different options, but then people are able to sort through it. You can create paralysis of choice. That is very much a thing, right?
What does that mean? Can you explain that?
Sure. Paralysis of choice is the have you ever seen the TikToks where somebody has a basket full of balls and they just dump it in front of a dog and the dog just like freezes and is like, oh my God, that is paralysis of choice.
Right.
Because there's so many good things that you don't know what to engage with first.
Right.
And so when you are creating your store, not only do you need to work on making it navigable so that you don't create that paralysis of choice, but then also when you're working on your promotions, on your seasonal stuff, that's when you take and focus on, okay, so this season we're really going to focus on this new dress.
Right.
This season we're really going to focus on home and living stuff, right? We tend to every winter, after we get past doing all of our Christmas stuff, we set up the spend your gift cards on stuff for your house, kind of snugly cozy, right?
Okay.
So that's when we push our blankets. And so we will create within Shopify a collection for that specific purpose. And that becomes the big thing that we push at that time. So then you can have more options, but each season or each event, you're focusing on not just a new pattern, but a particular group of items that you are really presenting to your customers. And that becomes your front and center, right?
Yeah.
So you can have all of these options, but if you don't want to have paralysis of choice, you need to be very clear about your current messaging as far as like what's the hot thing right now, right?
Timing your products,
you have like, yes, timing your products is super important. So yeah, I think that's the way to avoid that. And you can choose to stay narrow if that's more comfortable for you.
Right.
I have not found that to be particularly productive for me, but it might be different with your niche. And that's something too. I think that like I can't speak to every niche out there. So like if somebody's, niche is bass fishermen or whatever, this particular set of advice may not be very useful at all. And so my response to that is that you have to just kind of keep trying things and figure out what works for your niche and then tweak and perfect and continue to, move on down the line and find what works for you, for your niche, for your group.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to try things and don't be afraid to admit that the thing that you tried failed.
Definitely.
or wasn't as successful as you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be able to try those things and you have to be able to admit that the thing that you tried did not work. Right.
Well, that's not the easiest thing for some people sometimes, especially when you're invested in something like that. Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's absolutely essential to be able to go, that we tried it.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. We're going to do something else next time.
Well, here's what I want to leave you with, because I'm curious about this, because what I've been hearing this entire conversation is you found a niche, you worked on making it grow, you worked on making it developing the community around that niche. What would you say to aspiring entrepreneurs who want to start an online store, get into the print-on-demand game? They're having trouble figuring out how to narrow down that niche to be specific enough that they can kind of carve out a space for themselves. What would you say to them about what they can do to make the best decision about choosing the niche that works for them?
So I can say that what I did was I kept asking myself, what do I want that I can't find? Right.
Okay.
And and what is it about that thing that makes it the thing that I want? But also, what is it about that thing that makes it the thing that I can't find? Right. So for us, it was, okay, I can't find this specific kind of like, if you know, pride pattern that I could get away with wearing to work, where maybe my boss is not very friendly to the community, sure, but I can get away with wearing it. So that was what we went with, right? Like, okay, this is why I can't find it. And this is why I want it. But also, I mean, try actually just asking the community, right? Yeah. We continue to engage in conversation with our community all the time. Like when we come out with new products and new ideas and things like that, we will literally ask our customers, like, hey, this pattern, like, what do you want to see us put this on? If we were going to go with a new animal pattern, what do you want to see from us? Right.
Right.
And also try to do stuff sometimes that is a little fun and playful and see where that goes with it. Like we kind of on the spur of the moment. I don't know if you watched The Last of Us or have watched The Last of Us.
Oh, I've heard.
Okay.
I'm it's my binge session. I'm ready to do that yet, but I've heard it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to skate around this and try not to spoil you or anything like that. But in season 3, in episode 3, there is a gay love story. Okay. And strawberries feature in this. Like, it's very sweet. You'll see when you get there. But we decided that we were going to just kind of like on a whim. I was like, I'm going to make an enamel pin for this. And then I was trying to like think, what can I do? What can I do? And there's a trope called bury your gays, BURY, which means like because of the Hays Code in the US, you never used to be able to have a queer character in media who didn't end up dying. Okay, queerness had to be punished under the Hays Code some way. So normally gay characters or trans characters would die before the end of a movie. So bury your gays is a kind of tongue-in-cheek way to discuss that. So we made a BERRY, your gays pin, bury your gays, nice, which is a strawberry and it has a little like thing. And I just kind of like whipped it together one night, when I was sitting around drawing and put it together. And I was like, hey guys, you want to pre-order this? And we'll, once we get to like 100 of these, then I can send off an order, to our enamel pin company. And that for us, that was just playing. That was fun. Right. And we were quick in responding to this kind of zeitgeist moment where everybody was watching, these two men fall in love in this one episode. And it was really beautiful and everyone was reacting to it really strongly. And I did that because it was fun, but it was successful for us and it engaged our audience and people got really emotional about it. And then we got a lot of good social media interaction and had good conversations. So I would say, don't be afraid to have fun with your community. And if you don't end up making money on a particular project because you're having fun with it and you're playing around with your community and learning your niche and so on and so forth, that's okay, because it's all part of this like long process. Like this is a marathon. You're not in here to sprint, right? Yeah. You're not going to make this happen in a series of sprints. You have to just take each piece and play with it and build on it and just continue to engage.
Yeah.
I
love that. I love that so much. Spider, thank you so much for chatting with me today and also for all the work that you do. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really wonderful. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
This is Printing Profits.
Hey, this is Printing Success, crisp tips by Sarah at Wholesale TED. And one tip that I have is that before you print a slogan onto a t-shirt or a product, you can do a quick search to see if that phrase is trademarked. And it's a good idea to do so because sometimes phrases that are trademarked are really common. Like for example, did you know that the capitalized phrase Bananas, as in describing something as being crazy, bananas, was trademarked by Rachel Zoe. And so it's because of things like this that make it really easy to be accidentally caught out. Luckily though, it's easy to search for trademarks because they need to be registered, and that data is usually available online with each country's trademark office. So just go to the trademark office online for the country that you want to search for, such as the USA, and do a search for the phrase that you want to use and see if there are any trademarks that have been registered for it.
This is Printing Profits.
There's a thrill that comes with keeping an eye out for the big things before they're big things, for making the right choices at the right time and making that money. Which is why, to help with that, we're calling this part of the show Trend Spotting. Some niches are born from trends that are able to build and sustain an interested audience, and although most of them are usually never evergreen, that doesn't mean that they're not valuable. Micro trends especially can be insanely profitable if they're picked up on quickly. So where can you find them? Well, usually from meme, pop, and nerd culture. Like the Netflix show Stranger Things, inspiring the popular Hellfire Club merch online. It started out as a reference to the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons made during the show, or the hugely popular video game turned HBO show The Last of Us, starring actor Pedro Pascal, inspiring online memes and merch highlighting his role in the show, such as Daddy State of Mind. I could go on, but I won't. I'm sure you can find examples of things for the things that you love as well. The point is that new releases or viral moments that stem from microtrends are opportunities. They usually result in an increase in searches and sales, meaning useful SEO for products. Thanks for listening to Printing Profits. We'd like to thank Spider for sharing their experience with us and at the same time introduce you to the talented team behind this program. Our executive producer, Laura Gelvite, associate producer, Anita Nioki, technical production, Emil Yasuns and Valery Solechno, sound production, Christers Hartmanis, and I'm Tyler Zuffer. See you next time.